Hey there, welcome back to the Happy Homestead. I'm Amanda. It is early morning here. We're in the backyard and I have milkweed all around me, but within the milkweed, I got kale. I started the kale from seed. I don't even know when. I don't know if it was last fall or in the winter. I'm in zone 7B, so some of those more hardy greens grow really well here throughout the winter. And I also have in our raised bed in front of me a lot of mustard greens. And the weather is starting to get a little bit warmer. I'm starting to notice some of the little cabbage worms on those. And so I am going to harvest all of the kale today and all of the mustard greens today. We're going to use some of that for some fresh eating with salads, and Marley's here too. Hey, big boy. Hi, big boy. Hey. And then what I'm really excited to do is make some kale chips. So this is so easy, and it's something that I've been doing with my kids, and even before my kids. Probably about 15 years now, I've been doing these kale chips. They are delicious. They are so easy. And I'm going to try it with the mustard greens too, because I got a lot of those. So I got a big basket, and we need to start harvesting. And already I see a little worm. So this is what is eating my greens. So that is why I want to get them all harvested and processed before these guys get bigger and start really doing some destruction. I think that's probably it for the kale, honestly. It's a lot less than I thought I was going to get, but let's head over to the mustard greens. So in this bed is, as you can see, a lot of mustard greens here, but also shallots, onions, and garlic. And I have some summer squash seedlings that I have got to get planted. And I don't really have any room right now. So where this where this mustard greens is exactly where that summer squash is gonna go. And we got slugs too. Slugs are coming in and taking control. And some of it's bolting. Can you see some of the flowers too? Some of this is bolting also. I planted these seeds. This is the first time I've ever planted mustard greens. Never in my life have I purchased them from a store. I don't even know if I've ever eaten them before. And I had a free packet of seeds. So I just threw the seeds out. Again, I don't know if it was last fall or the winter, I'm not sure. But clearly it took. And it grew really well. And we've been enjoying them for months. They actually have turned out to be a really good salad green, especially when they're young and tender. What is also so great is I have more kale growing here. This kale looks a lot better than the previous patch, so I'm gonna get all this too. See some of these little moths flying out? I don't know if you can see that. I've seen a handful fly out. They're the culprits that are laying those eggs that are hatching into those nasty cabbage worms. So we're back in the house. I've got a lot of greens, a huge basket here full of greens that I need to now clean up. And no doubt there are some of these cabbage worms all over them, as well as slugs. Gross. So what I need to do is get all of these cleaned up. Big basket, lots of greens. I am going to clean out my sink and just start soaking some of these. I'll probably have to do it in a couple of different batches, but I'm gonna put a little bit of vinegar in and just water and soak everything up to get all of these critters out, clean them up. First, I actually need to clean my sink a bit. Isn't that how it always is, right? It's something you gotta do, but in order to do it effectively, you gotta get something else done first. It's called a twofer. You only planned on doing one thing, but you end up doing more. This is some of our home fermented apple core vinegar. I'm just going to use a little bit of that with the mother. Also just going to take off any obvious bugs and put them in a little soapy dish. So I got all of the greens cleaned. They look fantastic. I feel confident that I got all the bugs out. So now what I'm gonna do is kind of sort through them. Oh my gosh, look at that. I said I got all the bugs out. So what I'm gonna do now is sort through these. Any of these bigger mustard greens, I'm gonna use these for the kale chips or with the kale chips. And then any of the smaller, more tender ones, I'm going to put in the fridge in a bag and use that as salad greens or fresh green eating. And then all of the kale will go with the bigger greens, right, for the kale chips. And I'll probably start de-stemming them as much as possible as I go through that. It is time to finally make the kale chips. It's been a couple of days actually since I harvested all the greens, but I washed them, put them in some Ziploc bags, and I sometimes put like a little cloth towel, or if you have a paper towel, in with them because you don't want your greens sopping wet. You really want them to dry as much as possible. But then I put that extra towel in there just to help soak up any moisture. And then every now and then I'll check the bags in the fridge, and if I need to open them to let them air out a bit in the refrigerator, I can do that too. But I've got a huge bowl here of both the mustard greens and all of the kale that we harvested the other day. And so now it's time to actually make the chips. You saw me de-stem everything as well. And while I was doing that, if there were any smaller leaves, I just left them. But if there were bigger leaves, I kind of broke them apart. There's really no wrong way to flavor your kale chips. And to anyone that's watching this concept, if this concept's new to you, you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, that sounds so disgusting. But I get it. You just have to trust me on this. I'm putting gloves on because this can get messy, but you just have to trust me on this. I learned how to make these kale chips between 15 and 20 years ago. So for those of you that have been following along, you may have heard me talk about it. I used to be vegetarian and even occasionally vegan for most of my adult life. And it's only in the last 3 to 4 years that I've transitioned out of that into more of a whole food type, real food type diet. And I'm not looking back. I feel so much better, and it's working for me. But I got this recipe from a very well-known vegan, actually a raw food vegan chef, author. I've taken some classes with her, and this was her recipe, and we've done it ever since, and my kids love them. So without further ado, let's just get into it. It's 2 ingredients. I'm using tamari. She used namashoyu, which I think is just an even higher level grade. But if you have soy sauce, use that. But you want to use a really high grade soy sauce. Nutritional yeast. Now it's creates like a cheesy like flavor. So the salt and the cheesy, and it is really good. So I realize these 2 ingredients you may not have on hand, in which case I would just do some of the high-end soy sauce, and then maybe a little garlic powder, maybe a little onion powder, right? Just kind of play around with it and figure out what you like. I promise you it'll be delicious. I am just going to start dousing everything down. Now I make my kale chips in my Excalibur dehydrator. I find I get the best and most consistent result that way. And I would recommend that if you have a dehydrator or have access to one, that you're gonna wanna use that. If you do not have a dehydrator, you can absolutely do these in the oven, and you're gonna wanna do it on your lowest setting possible. I will be dehydrating these for a few hours. I would say 5 to 6 hours total, but halfway through I'm gonna check everything and, you know, kind of try to flip them and do what I can to make sure they're evenly dehydrating and there's no pockets and spots of moisture. So all I'm doing is rotating everything around, kind of getting it soaked up as much as possible with some of that namashoyu or soy sauce, or tamari in this case. Just going to keep adding the nutritional yeast. So you can see that the kale and the greens are, you know, very much wilted down in the bowl. Look how much smaller they've gotten just since when we started. So you may think, you know, you don't need a lot of kale to do this or greens, right? But let me tell you, they wilt and dehydrate down to just about nothing. So you want to start with as much as possible. All right, this looks pretty good. You know, the nutritional yeast and the soy sauce, they come together in almost like a little bit of a paste. And all you're doing is coating all of the greens. So we're gonna start putting this on our dehydrator trays. Kind of layer them through. I don't wanna have these huge globs, but I'm also not gonna go to the extent of, you know, separating every leaf out. Just want to make sure there is good airflow, good space, nothing's too tightly compacted. So I have the 9 tray Excalibur. You can see that over there behind me. I only filled 2 trays up, so I'm actually going to get more mustard greens and do this process again to fill up at least 2, maybe 3 more trays. Now when I put this in, the dehydrator trays are pretty close together, so I actually skip, right? So I'll do a tray, then an open space, then a tray, open space, and kind of go that way. So I can usually get between 4 or 5, depending upon the height of my item, into the tray at once. Okay, I have 4 trays in. I'm gonna put the lid on, the cover. I have mine set at between 105 and 115. I find that if you go any higher, you're actually killing a lot of the enzymes and the natural nutrients with that high heat, and I want to preserve that as much as possible. And I'm going to go at about 4-ish hours, and then I'll be able to come back and check everything. Okay, the 4 hours is almost up. They're a little gummy, so I'm actually going to put them in for just a few more hours, and then I will attempt to flip. It's the next morning. I kind of let them go all night, but around 9 o'clock or so, I did try to flip them, but there was one tray I didn't. I'm going to show you that. So this tray, I didn't do anything, and so I want you to see, right, they're kind of like stuck to the dehydrator sheet, and some of them are still a little gummy, so they're not all done. But that is the beauty of doing this in the dehydrator, is that you can't really dry the kale chips too much. But what I like to do is just kind of peel them off and flip, just like that. And it just helps get some of those gummy, more still kind of having moisture spots able to fully dry. But there's still some that are great. But I'm just going to put this back in for a few hours, and then it'll be done later today. And sometimes I even just keep them in the dehydrator. So if any point there's moisture in the air, I can just turn it on for a couple of hours and they're good to go. But some of these are done. I'm going to go get a different tray. And you can see that it does make a mess. You can make sure you do this either on your counter or over a sink and not just standing over your floor. These ones are pretty good. So yeah, once you feel comfortable with the desired crispness and dryness, you can either store them in a Ziploc bag, just on your counter, room temp, or like you said, sometimes I just keep them in the dehydrator. They get eaten within a couple of days anyway. But if it's raining like today and there's moisture in the air, I can just turn it on quick, zap them a little bit, and they dry out again. You don't have to worry too much about exposing them to a lot of oxygen or moisture like you do with a freeze-dried item. This one is just a little bit more set it and forget it and simple. Now, it's not even 8 o'clock in the morning yet. We're getting ready to go to school, but you're welcome to have some. Let me know what you think. Let everyone know what you think. Do you want one, Cole? Okay. You good?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, I'm ready to try it.
Okay. Is it good? Okay, thank you. We don't get really over enthusiastic responses at 8 o'clock in the morning. It is now officially 8 o'clock in the morning. All right, go wash your hands and face for school. Thank you for joining me on the kale chip journey. I really do hope you'll try this. And again, you can do it in the oven. You can play around with the different flavors. The kale is just a vehicle for all of the yummy flavors.
Hey guys.
Take care. Stay healthy. Stay well. Bye-bye.